Thank you, everyone, for joining another edition of MOYA Talks. As you know, MOYA turned 4 years old this month of January, so we decided to use the MOYA Talks to celebrate and highlight some of the talent that MOYA has. We don't have enough days to highlight every one of you, so we made a random selection. No, it was not random. And for the last edition, we have our newest member, Jensen Alao, an interior designer, lead green associate, who brings a wealth of international experience leading commercial, institutional, and residential applications in the USA, Ecuador, and Denmark. Welcome, Jensen. Jensen, how are you?
Well, today, a little nervous, but gonna power through.
Excellent. Please tell us a little bit about your background and why did you choose to become an architect?
Sure. So, um, let's see. I'm from the U.S. I'm originally from North Carolina. I've been in D.C. for um, maybe almost 10 years now. Um, as a child, I think I really enjoyed like art class and making things, and I always really thrived when it came to modeling projects or things like that. And I was talking to my mom this morning actually, and she trying to ask her questions and about why did I, just trying to gather a little bit more information. But she, said I would make things and they might be abstract or. But she would say that I would say, oh, I could turn this abstract thing into a building, and wouldn't that be cool? And so I think I just always kind of thought like thought in that way. Um, let's see. I also was somewhat influenced by growing up and often visiting Denmark, and just their design and architecture is very highly valued there. And so it was something that was just um, something that was important and something that I kind of turned my attention to as a child. And I think so. So eventually I studied architecture. I did my undergraduate studies in architecture. I initially, halfway through architecture, I actually wanted to change my major to like textiles and art and design because I really architecture wasn't everything that I thought it would be, but I stayed the course and I finished my architectural education. But I found myself kind of burned out by that environment and the competitiveness of that environment. And eventually, I went on to study something completely different for my master's. But ultimately, I ended up working in architecture, mostly to pay my bills. but I've, but it's been a professional vocation for me, and it's something that I believe that I am good at. So I just like continue to explore my relationship with um, design and interior design. I really work on the interior side, as some of you know, but so that's really how I came to work in architecture.
So during college, you spent some time in Prague, in the Czech Republic. Let's talk about that city, because I love it. As an architecture student, how impressive was it to see those centuries of history from the horloge to the modernist train stations?
Yeah, I think Prague for me, it more than anything when I think back on it, it was more of an escape of not living in the city. I was going to school and like normally it was more of a not about every single building or every work of architecture, but more about a life, experiencing life really in a city for the first time. And what I really loved about Prague, and I noticed when I was in Prague, is how, um, I was there during a very cold season, and I think that the beauty of Prague is, you know, um, the colors that exist in the architecture and the facades and the textures that you get with older buildings and just the beautiful elevations that exist in the city and the skylines that you get and the light and how it hits different buildings is something I really admired in that city, and just um, looking more at you know color and texture and how those things play together in a city. I think being able to create a warm environment in a place that's actually very cold. And I think that's what's beautiful about Prague. And I did I also, for Prague, I also think it was um, to experience there, there's different neighborhoods that are very distinct, places that are very quiet or places that are very busy, or, you know, or very like just distinct in what they are. And I think that you can really witness that if you're in Prague, that there's a distinct feeling to the neighborhoods there. And I think that's an interesting aspect of that city. Um,
And coming from North Carolina with more ample spaces and
mhm.
more spreaded cities, how was the experience to live in a more downtown oriented city?
Yeah, so I mean, as a student, I think you're always living in tight spaces. I think it was my first time really being on the metro, or, living in that way. But I think, as probably designers and architects, we always do kind of desire, we like quiet, but we also desire an urban setting at times. So I think it was just really my first experience um, in a setting where there was more um, exposure to an urban environment.
Later, you moved to Ecuador to work. Could you tell us a little bit about your experience, what you learned working in Ecuador?
Yeah. So again, I'm going to reflect mostly on my experience, not um, with regard directly to the profession, but I think that my experience in Ecuador was the first time that I was truly outside of my own comfort zone. Being in a different culture, a different language, being by myself. I lived with a family, but it was the first time that I really had to survive on my own and figure things out, and really developed a sense of adaptability um, through that experience, and just to really learn how to live in an environment outside of your own environment, I think was the biggest growth for me that I had during that time. And I also, I think I can be a very serious person, and I think being in Ecuador, I was often called to loosen up and lighten up and just to, enjoy the ride a bit. Um, and eventually I did. At first, it was very difficult for me, but then, soon I had more roommates and everything, and we had a lot of fun. So I think experiencing a very culturally rich, um, country is very proud, very strong of their culture. I think that that was something that, I took with me. And I think ultimately it was an experience that my first experience that really engaged me in having an empathy for, you know, people who are in a new environment or a new space or a new season. It just created an empathy in me for that.
You joined Moya very recently. What so far has been your favorite part of working at Moya and your favorite project you're involved?
Yeah, I think, I was very attracted to the culture of um, just there seems to be a more balanced culture, collaborative culture, you know, just a very collaborative experience, and we can, I know we'll talk about being a part of a business that's owned by a woman, but um, I am currently working on a daycare or Head Start center, and I think that's it's been really fun. I have not worked on that kind of setting for younger children before, so I think it's an exciting new challenge for me to think about a new kind of end user. I think that children, whether they know it or not, they have a great responsibility um, upon them, and I think it's our job as adults to really ensure that they are brought up in environments that are healthy and safe and foster healthy development in them. So I think that's what I'm looking forward to most about that project. And I'm also working on our Landria, which is a challenge in the sense that it's a larger scale project than what I've worked on before. So just learning everything new about larger scale projects.
How important was in your decision to join Moya that it is a woman-owned and diverse company?
Yeah, so it was something that I wasn't specifically seeking out, but I've always said, I wonder what it would be like to work for a woman or to work, with a not woman because, in this industry, often I'm working, around a lot of men or men are typically in positions or more in senior positions. So it was something that appealed to me. I've always thought that I don't want to speak for the men here. I don't know all of your thoughts and the way you think, but I think for me, one of the things I was thinking about is how, my communication with women and how I can communicate with a woman in my natural communication styles. Then sometimes, you know, if I receive direction from a man, I might assume that if I don't understand something or that it's my own fault or that I haven't or that I have to just go figure it out. Whereas a woman, I might ask again the question or she might a woman might initially explain something more thoroughly or more looking at something more holistically. And again, it's a personal thing for me. And I feel like I'm in an environment though that where there is a lot of open communication and dialogue. And to me, in general, that's just important. I think that women have their own set of challenges, men have their set of challenges, women have their set of challenges. But I think that a woman who understands the challenges of women that is able to trickle down in a, a business, a corporate environment, a company environment. And I've always said it's not that women don't want to work. We want to work, but we also know the challenges that we have and how we need to balance our life in order to work the best way possible. So
You have also done mentorship with young girls and young women. How do you transmit this that you just related to them?
um, yeah, and I wanted to um, go back to one more point about the diversity. I think it's slipping my mind, but I think to work for a company who it is a minority-owned business, to work for someone who has views the world through a lens that has you've seen many challenges. I think that's something I'm very um, fortunate to be a part of a company who is led by someone who sees the world in a way that um, you know that has experienced challenges. So I think that's important. With regard to, can you repeat the last question? Sorry. as we go.
I'll just ask you about your work as a mentor for young girls and young
Yes.
women, trying to
Yeah.
make it.
So um, I have participated in a program in DC for where I worked with young girls who are interested in architecture, and I think it's really encouraging to see that desire and excitement from the younger crowd. I think often with and I know some girls in architectural school now, they were just starting out, and I think that I just try to tell them that you know to learn as much as you can, because once you have a specific knowledge, or that someone can't take that away from you, and just to keep building on that. I tell them to be more bold than me, to ask more questions than I did, and to really just follow the curiosity that they have. Um, if there's if you have a curiosity, then it's probably something that you should explore, that you should consider, and it's worth taking the time to do that. And then I think also we there's a gap between architectural education and the actual architectural experience and working environment. And I think it's important for young people to know upfront like what they're getting into, and that um, what they teach you in school is not always what you experience like in the professional setting. And I think that it's only fair that not to um, not to dissuade somebody from studying, but to for them to be knowledgeable about what you do in school and what you do in a professional environment are you know two different things. I mean, you use bits and pieces of all of it, but I think that's only fair.
In what was the biggest shock for you between expectations and reality in the work environment?
Um, I I mean, there's we do a lot of paperwork and coordination, and it's oftentimes where we're bound by codes that keep us very safe, but they also limit us from you know being this artist that we want to be sometimes. And I think that it's an architect's job is really to balance. I mean, it's completely undervalued by society. I mean, we help people buildings stand up and people stay safe, but also like how do we make things beautiful at the same time? So I think
Besides architecture, you have a master's in Oriental and African Studies from the University of London, and you have done research in environmental law. I find that fascinating, and I wanted to ask you about your focus on climate justice and how do you integrate that with design?
yeah, I think generally um, I could probably spend a lot of more time studying this question and about it an appropriate response. But I think generally as a society, I think there's just as long as I think the first thing is just to be aware of the impact um, of building and the building industry on the environment. There's so much energy that goes into building, and it's I'm I think that if we could, I think it's something that we really have to be aware, to be cognizant of the impact that we are having in building a project. Is it there's a balance between you know tearing something down that does actually need to be rebuilt, or what can we reuse, or how can technology make this more like be built in a more sustainable way, or just being very cognizant and aware of where things are actually coming from, and just sort of the global impact of, I think that the design industry has, you know, we have a huge impact on the number of materials that are transported, and everything takes fuel to get jobs done. And just how can we think locally? I think locally is the best way to sometimes approach a project, like, but just really being aware.
Is there a role of, as an educator that a designer and interior architect has on this uh, raising of awareness?
I think a lot of it is really done behind the scenes. It's it's our job to at times educate our clients, but I think more than anything, it's us doing our jobs well, to do the research, to specify something that, if it's not necessarily a lead project or whatever, that it's our job to do the work behind the scenes to make sure that we are providing the most sustainable or efficient or um, product, or to really understand, like, as what I'm designing now still going to be good in 10 years or 50 years. It's those decisions that we have some control of over as designers, to create spaces, and to use materials that are going to um, still be relevant and attractive in in the much longer term. I think that you can push developers to a certain extent, but it's often it's challenging at times. Very challenging.
Jensen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to open the floor so people can ask you questions, and I know some of them want to. So please, don't be shy. Noor, come on, I know you have a question.
You're putting me on the spot here.
Yes, I am.
I actually, it's not a question, it's a comment about uh, working in with women, and I totally commend you for having the mentorship program. I wanted to know how did that come about? How can someone do this in the future? Also, like, something that I would be interested in. I'm right now, I always keep saying, like, for every female that I know, is like, you just have to support every woman you see, whether it's in the work environment or outside of the work environment. Just support each other. So that mentorship program is a great idea, but how did you come up with that, and how can we do this in the future?
So I'm not actually in charge of a program, but I did participate through the Washington Architectural Foundation. They run a program called Design Like a Girl. So it's through that program where they do work with younger girls who have an interest in architecture. And then I just happen to organically have um, some like college age students in my life who I know that are in architecture programs. So it's not something by design, but I think that if it's something that someone has an interest in, I think that um, seeking out um, architecture programs in your city, or and going to them, asking them if there's a way to work with the women, the young women, if there's any opportunity there to provide support, or um, guidance or mentorship. I think that that's something that one could do.
I'm going to send on the chat the address of the Architecture for Everyone and the Girl Mentor program that she
COVID
mentioned.
kind of shut that down, so it's
Yeah.
been on a break for a while.
Mhm.
Thank you, Noor. Thank you, Jensen.
Thank you.
Any more comments?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. Jensen, I thought you did so great today.
Thank you.
I don't know if you were really nervous, but I really, I really enjoyed learning more about you. I mean, I like the series of learning more about people, but I really, even though I participated in your interviews, I learned so much about you today that I didn't know before. So, yeah, this was really great. You did really great. That was no question, just a comment.
I really appreciate it. It was very well thought conversation, very candid, and we learned a lot.
Would love to see the projects that you were involved with. I mean, this is a comment for everyone. It's like you guys are so exciting, and when we hear about you, I would love to see the projects as well. Like the project that you're working on right now, I'd like to see the progress of it. Would be nice.
It's good to share projects within a firm. You often don't know what the other person is working on, and
Yeah.
to really give feedback and learn and different perspectives and things, it can be really helpful.
Yeah, I agree.
And then this is a very interesting project. We had a person back in October who is a representative of the Salvadorian community in Orlando. So we learned a lot about the community too.
Yeah, I'm familiar with neighborhood.
Jensen, this has been great. Thank you everybody for coming. Thank you, Jensen, again for your time.
Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you for the session.
Great.
Thanks, Jensen.
Goodbye.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Rodrigo. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, yes.